Hi everyone. As you know, the June has started, and in Pakistan, the June is very much hot here. So, luckily, there is a rainy day outside here, and I am enjoying a very good day. So, with this good environment, and let's start our today's lecture. Today, we have to see the core components of the Linux, and the first core component of the Linux is the kernel. The Linux kernel is most important component of the Linux operating system. You can think of it as the brain of entire system. Every action performed by Linux eventually passes through the kernel. The kernel manages all hardware resources such as CPU, memory, hard disk, network interfaces, USB devices, and graphical hardware. Applications do not communicate directly with hardware. Instead, they send requests to the kernel, and the kernel handles those requests safely and efficiently. Applications do not communicate directly with hardware. Instead, they send requests to the kernel, and the kernel handles those requests safely and efficiently. For example, when you save a file, the application sends a request to the kernel. The kernel then communicates with the storage device and writes the data. Similarly, when you browse the internet, the browser communicates with the kernel and the kernel manages the network communication. Without the kernel, Linux cannot function because it serves as a bridge between software and hardware. And if you want some more details about this kernel, then you can visit this website www.kernel.org. When you press power button on a computer, the software firmware such as BIOS or UEFI first initiates the hardware and then hands control to the bootloader. The bootloader is responsible for locating the Linux kernel and loading it into the memory. Once the kernel is loaded, control is transferred to the kernel and operating system startup process begins. Once the once One of the most common bootloaders is Linux grub, which stands for Grand Unified Bootloader. Grub also allows us grub, grub also allows users to select different operating systems or kernel versions when machine starts. Service is a program that runs in background without direct user interaction. Services provide important functionality required by the operating system or applications. For example, a web browser service such as Apache HTTPD listen for incoming web requests and serves web pages. An NTP service synchronize system time with external time servers. A DNS service resolves domain name into IP addresses. So, in Linux, these background services are often referred to as daemons. System administrators frequently manage services using systemctl commands to start, stop, restart, enable, or disable services. A file system determines how data is stored, organized, and retrieved from storage devices. Without a file system, the operating system would not know how to store files or locate them later. Linux supports many file systems. Extended 4 is one of most common Linux file systems used on Linux servers and desktops. XFS is widely used in enterprise environments because of its scalability. BTRFS provides advanced features such as snapshots and compression. Linux can also access non-native file systems such as FAT and NTFS, which are commonly used by Windows systems. Choosing a correct file system depends on performance, scalability, reliability, and business requirements. X Windows file system provides the graphical foundation for Linux desktop environments. Its primary responsibility is managing graphical displays, mouse inputs, keyboard inputs, and window rendering. Applications such as web browser, file managers, and terminal emulators rely on X Windows systems to display graphical interfaces. Historically, most Linux distributions use X11 as a standard graphical system. Although newer technologies such as VLAN are becoming more common, understanding X Windows remains important because many systems still use it today. The desktop environment provides the graphical user experience that user interacts with. It includes windows, menus, taskbars, icons, applications, launchers, file managers, and desktop settings. Genome Genome is commonly used in enterprise distributions such as Red Hat Enterprise Linux. KDE offers extensive customization options and a modern appearance. XFS is lightweight and often preferred on systems with limited hardware resources. Fluxbox is extremely lightweight environment focused on space and simplicity. The choice of desktop environments does not affect the Linux kernel. It only changes how users interact with the system. Command line and shell. The command line allows user to interact with Linux by typing commands instead of using graphical interfaces. The shell acts as an interpreter between the user and the operating system. It reads commands entered by the user and translates them into actions performed by operating system. Bash is most commonly used shell and it is default shell on many Linux distributions. Other popular shells included ZSH and TCSH. Although the graphical interfaces are useful, the command line remains one of the most powerful features of Linux because it enables automation, scripting, remote administration, and advanced Linux management. So, hopefully you enjoyed this today lecture, and don't forget to like and subscribe and share it with your friends and family. See you next time. Thank you.